Hey folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's Tools, Tips, and Talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. In today's episode, we're going to start our folder series. We're going to be making a liner lock folder. So this is going to be a multi-part series. We're going to go really in-depth, take you through all the parts. In this episode, we're going to mostly talk about design, tooling, the equipment you're going to need to make your journey successful. We need to start out in the right direction. So first, let's go down to the table and take a look. So this is basically what we're going to be making. This is known as a liner lock. It's got the interior liners here that the bolster and the scales sit on, and to release it, so it's this little piece here, slides open. When it opens, it will slide open and lock, so hence liner lock. To unlock it, you just push this little thing back and close it. So that's what we're going to be making. Info about this knife. So this particular one is not my design. This was, I did this in a class that I did with Mastersmith Mike Vagnino. So this is his design, but we're going to do something different, and we're going to do this on one of my designs. I'm just showing you this as an example. This particular one has 416 bolsters, 416 stainless steel. It has carbon fiber scales. All of the screws are titanium, and the liners are titanium. And it's got a stainless steel. This is something like D2, not quite, but similar to D2 blade. And we're going to be making something basically similar to this. Some important aspects to a liner lock. Obviously, it has to lock very nicely. It shouldn't be loose. We want the lock to at least come over halfway. Too much and it's too hard to unlock. Too little and it could slip. So this one is just the right amount. There's also what's called a detent ball. When this is in the closed position, you'll notice it goes, and at some point, okay, it just snaps together. That's because there's a tiny little ball in there that kind of drops into a little channel, which keeps it closed. Otherwise, you would do this and it would want to open. So you can either pull it open. This particular one has a finger well here, so you can just flip it open. So that's what we're going to be making. I'm going to take you guys upstairs. We're going to talk about design and what's important in the design of these. Then we'll come back down and talk about all of the tooling you're going to need to start. Okay, so I'm in Knife Print. This is where I do most of my knife designs. I think it's particularly great for folders, and so I'm going to show you why. So here I've got first just the blade portion. The blade portion has obviously the blade design. I just have it drawn out where the bevel is. This one has a false edge. But the other aspects of this, it has a pivot hole. Okay, this is what it's going to pivot around. This one happens to be 3/16. And it has this crescent-shaped channel. This is where it's going to be the channel for a stop pin. So there's going to be a stop pin fixed between the liners that's going to travel in this channel, and that will control how far open the blade goes and how far closed. So it'll make sure that it stops where it needs to stop. This part down here, this is the kind of the trigger mechanism, the finger that you're going to flip with your finger to open it. This flat part right here, this is going to be where the lock rests against when it's in the lock position. And then there's some other aspects you'll see when we show the other parts. So now let's show the lock liner. So the liner here, I'm going to just hide the blade for a second. It has this cutout here. Okay, we're going to cut this out later, but this is going to be the part that actually is kind of bent over and performs as our lock spring. Okay, there's going to be two of these, obviously, that are mirror images of themselves. The other one is not going to have the cutout. And typically the lock liner is on the left side of the knife, if you're looking down on it from the spine. We've got some other holes drawn on here. These are really just marking holes for where the back bar is going to be back here. Okay, that's kind of like a spacer between the liners that keeps the liners the right distance apart. We've got some other holes that will be screw holes for our scales, and then here and here, and then this is our pivot hole. This is just a marker hole to drill the pivot hole. This is our stop pin. Okay, and if we show the blade, and I'm going to put it actually into pivot mode, you'll see that the blade travels, and when it hits that pivot, that's where it would stop. Okay, right about there. It's not exactly perfect in this one, but that's what we would want. Now, there's certain things you'll see. The back part of the knife right here is a little rounded to match the arc here of the bolster, okay, of the liner. In the open position, the finger notch here is hidden entirely by the scale as well. That's kind of why the scale comes out in this format. Okay, and you kind of want to just play with this a little bit. This part of the blade you want flush with the scales when it's closed. You obviously don't want the blade to protrude past here. You want the top of the blade to be inside here, and then there's a cutout here to get access to the blade if you want to just pull it out, or if you want to flip it out with the thumb ramp. You'll notice the lock is a little bigger here. That's because we're going to end up grinding down this lock face on the blade, but we want it a little bigger. Obviously, if it's too short, that's no good. So I've drawn all this with the crescent and the stop pin and all that, but that really doesn't help us to have those on here. It's much easier just to put little markers of where to start your drill marks. So that's what we're actually going to do. So I've removed a lot of the pieces to this, the crescent, the 3/16 hole, and I've basically just put little spot holes. We're going to be marking those. It's just the easiest way to do this. So I'm actually going to be exporting each of these layers as DXF files, and I'm going to be lasering this right onto a piece of steel. Alternately, if you don't have a laser, what you can do is just export these as PDF files, and then you can cut them out and center punch the holes onto your design. Let's isolate these. So the reason we've done this, we're going to mark our pivot hole, and these are going to be the ends of our crescent. And I'm going to show you guys in a subsequent video how we're going to get this arc here. We really just want the two endpoints right now. So looking at our liner, we've got a bunch more markings here. This one and this one are just going to mark out where we're going to cut out our liner, our lock. Okay, so that's going to give us these lines so we know where to spot those. This is going to be our pivot hole, because of course that pivot has to go right through the liners. This one and this one, these are going to be for our bolster. Imagine there's going to be a line here. This is going to be covered by a bolster, and then this and this are going to be the screws to screw down the scales that are going to go on this side. These two holes, the inside holes are going to be locator holes for locator pins to line up our back bar, and then the outer holes are going to be the screw holes to screw the back bar into the liner. This is going to be our stop pin. So this is just locates our stop pin. And then this one here we'll talk about later, but this is going to be where our detent hole is going to be. So that's going to have the little detent ball that's going to travel around. So let's activate our layers again and talk about a few other things that are important. So this detent hole is kind of important. There is, when the knife is in the closed position, okay, so right there, there's going to be a hole in the blade. Okay, so there's a hole in the blade that little detent ball is going to sit in. In the closed position, it's going to sit in that little hole. When I open it, that hole in the blade, okay, you'll see it traveling here. I've created a copy of that hole here. I want to make sure that it's inside of this bolster, because if you put this in the wrong spot and this hole happens to be outside, or you made your bolster too small, you're going to see that hole. So this may seem a little confusing to you, but trust me, this is going to make sense soon. Right now I'm going to export these two layers as DXF files so I can mark these out and send them to my laser, and I'm actually going to score these on some steel and some titanium for the liners. So I have my little profiles cut out. Let's talk about tooling. First, the big tooling. So you're going to need some kind of way to cut these out. I just used a portaband. It works fine on titanium. So you're going to need some kind of saw to cut this stuff out. Next, you're going to need a disc sander. Something that you can take the burrs off, which you're going to be doing at pretty much every step. So get yourself a disc grinder. Next, you're going to need some kind of either a very accurate drill with a DRO or a mill. Preferably a mill, but not everyone can afford a mill. I'm going to be doing this series. I'm going to actually be doing it on my mill, but I'm really just going to be using the mill mostly as a drill press. And you'll see what I mean when we get to that. I will talk about things like if you only have a drill, do it this way. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, you're going to need a grinder and everything else you would need to do normal knife making, so I'll be using a 2x72. Now, let's talk about small tooling. Okay, so I'm going to go through all of the small tooling you're going to need. Before that, I really suggest you go get yourself one of these. This will tell you all of the drill numbers and their associated sizes. You're going to be referring to something like this very often. So there'll be a link to this in the video description. I think I paid $6 for this. It's magnetic. You can't go wrong. Definitely get yourself one of these. So first of all of the drills that I'm talking about are going to be carbide. We're drilling through titanium. You're going to need carbide drill bits. So just break down and get carbide. So number 54 and 53, these will be for drilling the hole for the detent. So there's a little hole that the detent ball will be driven into, and then there's the hole where it's going to place when it locks. And there'll be a cheat sheet at the end that'll show you everything you need and what it's for. So number 44 and 49 drills. So these will be for number 44 will be the clearance hole for the little screws that we're going to use, and then 49 is going to be the hole for tapping it. So we're going to be using number 2 56 screws. So this is the clearance hole, and this is the hole you need before you start to tap. We're going to need some 1/16 inch drill bits. These are going to be for lineup pins. I've got some stainless steel lineup pins. You're definitely going to want some of these. These are hardened stainless lineup pins. Definitely need some of these. Next up, we get to all the 1/8 items. We have some 1/8 pins here. These are again stainless hardened pins. These will be our stop pins. Okay, they're just super useful as well, and you'll see some other uses that I'm going to use for these. I have some 1/8 inch drills, okay, for doing things like just drilling out holes, but I have 1/8 inch reamers. Okay, you're going to need, reamers are basically super accurate drill bits. You're going to need these for the stop pin, because these things are, you want these super accurate, you want zero play, so you're going to need a reamer. Again, these are carbide reamers. Okay, the number 7 bit, this is going to be for going up to 3/16. When we want to use a 3/16 ream, we're going to drill this number 17 hole first and then ream it directly to 3/16. I have a bunch of, again, 3/16 hardened dowel pins, and these are great just to use as temporary pins. We're going to just be using them on the drill press just as little swivels, so lots of reasons why you want these. I also have 3/16 drills for just drilling 3/16 holes. Those probably aren't strictly necessary if you're just going to be doing 3/16 reamer. We've got some taps here. These are 256 taps, so 2-56. These are, they're very tiny, but this is what the screws are going to be. I have this tapping fluid specifically for titanium, because we're going to be tapping the liners. You're going to need some nail sets. This is for tapping in the detent ball. So you're going to need a set of these. For creating the liner lock, that strip, that band here, so that this becomes a spring, you're going to need one of these Dremel blades. This is a really, really thin Dremel blade, so you're going to need one of these. And then, of course, you're going to need a lot of the actual folder parts, but we'll get into those when we use them. I know this looks like a lot of stuff, but you're going to need it all. And it may sound pretty scary, but everything you see here was about $700 because I have multiples of every drill and reamer. The last thing you want is to have a very specific drill and not be able to get it because you broke one and be at a standstill. So get at least a couple of each one, but be prepared. This stuff is expensive. I got all of this stuff at MSC. You could, wherever you get your drills, just make sure that they are carbide drills. So a little more about the titanium that we're using. We're using grade 5 6AL4V titanium. Why are we using this kind of titanium? It's very easily machined. You can cut it with a saw. It's also pretty springy, so it's great for using as liner locks. And it resists corrosion because it's titanium, but it's a good grade of titanium. It also is easy to tap because we're going to be tapping a whole bunch of these for screws, so we want to make sure we can tap it. So that's the titanium that we're using, and it's really easy to grind, though it does really spark. If you've never ground titanium, it sparks really, really brightly. You'll see this a bit later in the series when we grind it. I've ground the lock liner pretty close to dimensions. You can see it's probably maybe a 32nd away from my line. You do want to stay away from your line right now. At the very kind of end, or close to the end, we're going to trim up everything. Especially when we do the parts of the knife here, like this round part. This is flush with the edge of the bolster. So don't go making this precise right now because you don't want to have to grind more off of your bolster just yet. Same with down here, and especially the lock face where the lock is going to hit, which is right here. Make sure you got a lot of meat here in case you have an oops. You don't want to, if you take this down too far, you're scrapping the blade and starting over, and that presents you a bunch of challenges. So the next thing we're really going to do is we're going to CA glue the liner, and notice I cut this one really close only because I want to be able to put it over top of the show liner. I'm going to CA glue them in place, and then I'm going to go through all of the holes that I need, and I'm going to drill them straight through. So CA glue, I'm using Starbond CA glue. You're going to want the accelerator as well. I just like this glue. We're going to be using CA glue quite a few times here to do certain operations. So that's all we're going to do for this week. We've got things started off. I've shown you what tooling you're going to need. You're going to have to get all that stuff ordered if you want to follow along. Hopefully this was informational. There's just going to be a lot of info going forward. Next episode, we start with drilling all of our holes and basically getting our mechanism down. So we're going to be getting the pivot so that this thing closes. So the very first thing is to drill all our holes, drill our pivot hole, and then the main thing I'm going to show you next time is how to drill this crescent in the knife so that it will pass around the pivot and stop at the stop pin. Thanks, folks. Stay tuned for the rest of this series, and thanks for watching.